योगः कर्मसु कौशलम्.
Hello everyone, myself Dr. Anish V. Pillai, Assistant Professor, School of Legal Studies, Cochin University of Science and Technology, Kerala. At the outset, let me put on record my sincere gratitude to UGC Human Resource Center of Gujarat University for giving me this wonderful opportunity to connect with all of you and to deliver a session on responsibility of states under international law with special reference to contagious diseases. I also would like to thank Professor Dr. Jagdish Joshi sir, Professor and Director of UGC HRDC of Gujarat University. As teachers, we know how important participating in orientation and refresher programs. Sometimes when we apply for orientation or refresher programs, it is very difficult to get admission. In this context, we have to see the greatness of UGC HRDC of Gujarat University, because I have seen that this HRDC has organized number of refresher and orientation programs wherein they have provided opportunity to large number of participants, like 9,000 participants, 6,000 participants, 2,500 participants at a time in these programs. It's a wonderful and remarkable job done by this HRDC. I would like to congratulate Professor Joshi sir and his team for doing this fantastic service to the teachers in India. With these few words, I would like to start with my session. My session is titled as Responsibility of State under International Law with special reference to contagious diseases. We all know responsibility of state or the law relating to state responsibility is one of the core area of international, because as we all know, states are the conventional or primary subjects of international. So whenever there is some violation of international law, obviously the other party will say the state is responsible for such violation. Now, why this question is relevant as of now? We have seen that worldwide, including we also, suffering because of the hardships created by COVID-19 pandemic. Now, it is alleged that COVID-19 pandemic, which is resulted from COVID virus, is a creation of one particular country. Or you can see allegations like this virus is created in a laboratory. When one particular country was doing some activity with this, it has accidentally escaped from the lab. So because of that, there were some petitions, some allegations against that country. And certain petitions, one petition filed in US and two other petitions filed before international forums, alleging that the said state is responsible for this contagious diseases. That is the relevance of this topic as of now. Though this is a very good area under international law, in your refresher course, I want to highlight this basic principles of state responsibility in the context of contagious diseases, especially COVID-19. Now, if you see the idea of state responsibility, it has its origin from 1646. Almost all the international law literature says that it starts, the idea or the concept starts from 1646. Why? What is the significance of the 1646? Because at that time, the great jurist, the father of international law, that is Hugo Grotius, he said, every fault creates the obligation to make good the losses. So this statement of Hugo Grotius is considered as origin of state responsibility law under international. Now, in this century, thereafter, number of development was happened with respect to this laws regarding state responsibility. But recently, last 1 year, the issue of COVID-19 pandemic, because of COVID-19 pandemic, the discussion regarding state responsibility is also came into limelight. Now, what is state responsibility under international law? Some of you might be teaching international law, so you know that. But still, for the sake of this session, I will just start with the idea of state responsibility. What is state responsibility? I will just read one definition. It is a duty to make reparation for the injury sustained, a duty incumbent upon the state which violated or did not comply with an international obligation. So state responsibility is a duty to make reparation to those who suffered injury, and whose duty is that the person because of whom such violation happened, or the person or the state who did not comply with those international obligations, which resulted injury to such state. So whenever there is a violation of international law, or whenever there is a non-observance of international law, thereby, if any other state suffers an injury, the other party has to provide reparation. This is what the idea of state responsibility. So generally speaking, every internationally wrongful act of a state entails the international responsibility of that state. Now, one issue here, it's a theoretical issue. When we are talking about state responsibility under international law, there arises always a question, is it responsibility or liability? Because I am also using the term state responsibility. Now, some of the authors having the idea it is state liability. Now, whatever be the theoretical conflict, that is whether it is state responsibility or state liability, both are trying to talk about the obligation of a state to compensate or to provide a reparation to injured party. So in that sense, even if it is state responsibility or liability, the effect will be same. So those who want to call it a state responsibility, well, they can do it. And those who want to consider it a state liability, well, they can also do the same. But the essential idea is providing relief or reparation to injured party by the state because of whom the injury goes to other state. Now, interestingly, one of the basic ingredient of state responsibility, that is an act or omission. So unless and until there is an act or omission on the part of a state, there is no question of state responsibility. Now, what is an act? Everybody know that I'm not going to talk details. So whenever there is an act, it's like a positive act, violating something by doing something. Now, at the same time, by omission also, when there is an omission, then also there can be state responsibility. If such omission causes an injury to another state. You can see a case that is UK versus Albania. This case is very popular, which is one of the first case wherein it is stated an omission on the part of a state. Thereby, if another state suffers something, this state have responsibility under international. So that means state responsibility can arise either through act or through omission. Now, based on the parties or based on the agencies who commits this act or omission. Internationally, the concept of state responsibility is divided into two. So based on the agency who commits that act or omission, this idea of responsibility is divided into two. One is original responsibility of states. Second is indirect or vicarious responsibility of states. Now, with respect to original responsibility, there's a very good definition given by Oppenheim. You can see that is original responsibility is borne by a state for acts which are directly immutable to it, such as acts of its government or those of its officials or private individuals performed at government's command or with its authorization. That means state responsibility, that is original state responsibility, arises if it is done by an agency or a person who is directly connected with the government. Now, just an explanation, you can see original responsibility arises from the act of its executive and administrative organs of the state, for the act of diplomatic envoys, that is diplomatic personnel like ambassador and everything, then act of members of armed forces, then acts of judiciary, then acts of constituent units of federal states. Like in the Indian context, suppose state of Tamil Nadu or state of Gujarat violates an international law, then as a country, India will be liable for that. So these are the situations in which a state is responsible under international law for original state responsibility. Now, coming to vicarious responsibility or indirect state responsibility. Now, this type of liability arises out of certain internationally injurious acts of private individuals. That private individuals can be a national or alien in the state's territory, or it can be some officials, but acting in their individual capacity, not in their official capacity. So when something happens in Indian territory, and when something does by an individual standing in Indian territory, India will be responsible for that. That circumstances we can call it as vicarious or indirect state responsibility. Now take the examples, the major examples, that is like act of mob violence or violence in insurgency, or violence occurs due to civil war or internal war, etc. So in all these situations, suppose take a small example, there's a mob violence occurred in a particular part of India, and as a result, some of the properties or some of the embassy of a foreign country destroyed. We can say India will be responsible for that towards such country. And that responsibility is indirect state responsibility or vicarious state responsibility. And in this regard, you can see one of the very beautiful statement given by Hans Kelsen that will give you more idea about indirect state responsibility. I'll just read for you. The state's indirect or vicarious responsibility, however, consists in nothing else but the state's obligation to repair the moral and material damage caused by internationally illegal acts of the states, and in some reason or another are not considered to be acts of the state. That is, it means very simple, these acts are not done by state, but those acts which can be attributed to state will be considered as a circumstances for giving rise to vicarious state responsibility or indirect state responsibility. Now, what are the laws relating to state responsibility under international? Now, if you see, under international law, the rules relating to state responsibility is based on customary rules, because These rules were evolved by act or practice of the states. So it is largely covered by customary rules. And subsequently, there were a number of judicial decisions. Though there is no precedent value under international law for judicial decisions, but still, the jurisprudence created by various arbitral and judicial tribunals like international arbitral tribunals or international court of justice, they are also forms or they are also acting as a source of law relating to state responsibility. Now, in the absence of a direct treaty or treaty international law, these customary international law principles and the jurisprudence created by these tribunals and international court of justice provides the basic rules relating to state responsibility. Now, interestingly, you can see there are some treaties under international law which contains provision relating to state responsibility, like Article 3 of the Fourth Hague Convention, 1907, on the laws of customs of war and war on land. It says like this: a belligerent party which violates the provisions of the said regulations shall, if the case demands, be liable to pay compensation. So that means, though the law relating to state responsibility is based on customary international law, there are some treaties which provides a provision for dealing with state responsibility in that particular context. So, as I said, the law relating to state responsibility is covered under customary international law. But at international level, there were several attempts to codify it into a treaty. So you can see this attempt was started from 1920 onwards. Because in 1920, the League of Nations Council has appointed a committee of jurists, but they could not succeed. And subsequently, there were codification conference held at The Hague in 1930. And thereafter, United Nations was established. Then in 1948, United Nations has created International Law Commission for the purpose of codifying international law. Now, UN has identified 14 topics for codification. And this law relating to state responsibility was one of the 14 topics selected for codification by United Nations. So this idea or the work for codification started in 1956. And UN has appointed a special rapporteur, F.V. Gracia Amador. And subsequently, there were other rapporteurs were also appointed, different conferences were held. And finally, on August 9th, 2001, International Law Commission has adopted a draft. It is titled as Draft Articles on the Responsibility of States for International Wrongful Acts. Now, interestingly, if you see, this draft articles is divided into 4 parts. Part 1 talks about internationally wrongful act of a state. Part 2 talks about content of the international responsibility of a state. Part 3 talks about implementation of international responsibility of a state. And Part 4 contains certain general provisions applicable to other articles as a whole. So these are the content of this draft articles. Now, interestingly, you have to remember one thing. This draft articles, which was adopted in 2001, is still remaining as a draft articles. So because of that, this draft articles does not have any binding effect. But one thing is there. Though this draft article is not legally binding, whenever there is a question of state responsibility, people will refer this draft article. The reason is this draft article represents a codification of the customary international. Or in other words, what is there in customary international law, that is put it in the draft articles. So because of that, there are instances where Even the tribunals were also referred draft articles for deciding question of state responsibility. So don't forget that. Now, an analysis of this draft articles and the existing customary international law give you idea about the basic principles relating to state responsibility. Now, from this understanding, I will just tell you the basis of state responsibility. What are the basis of state responsibility? Now, regarding this basis of state responsibility, there were different opinions. And one of the major opinion is fault or subjective theory of responsibility. Fault or subjective theory of responsibility. Second is risk or objective theory of state responsibility. And third is eclectic theories of responsibility. Then fourth is theories of absolute liability or liability without a wrongful act. Now, coming to these four aspects, that is, a state is responsible under international law, either by committing a fault. When there is a fault on the part of a state, that fault will give rise to responsibility. That is the basis of this fault theory. Now, when it comes to objective theory, even if there is no fault as such on the part of a state, if the conduct of a state causes an injury to another state, the state is responsible under state responsibility. Now, the third theory is like eclectic theory, which is like a compromise. Even if there is a fault, that is, state responsibility arises when there is a fault or even without a fault. If the act or the conduct of state causes an injury to another, then there arises state responsibility. So these are the three different theories, which is popularly known as theories as to the basis of state responsibility or theories of state responsibility. Now, other than these three theories, we have theories of absolute liability or liability without a wrongful act. This theory, it's not actually a theory. This view has originated because there are large number of treaties under international law which imposes responsibility to state even without a fault on the state. Like Convention on the International Liability for Damage Caused by Space Object, 1971. Then the Paris Convention on Third Party Liability, Brussels Convention on the Liability of Operator of Nuclear Ships, International Convention on Civil Liability for Oil Pollution Damages, etc. All these treaties talks about a situation if through certain conduct anybody suffers an injury, state will be liable. Whether there is any fault or not, that is irrelevant. It is absolute liability on the part of state. So these are the basis of state responsibility under international law. Now, when a state is responsible, as I said earlier, there must be an act or omission. So there are three ingredients or three constituent elements for imposing responsibility to a state. First of all, there must be an act or omission. Without an act or omission, there cannot be a state responsible. There cannot be a responsibility. Second is the act or omission can be imputed to the state. Imputed in the sense, either it might have done by an agency connected with the state, or it might have done by somebody, but that action can be imputed in one way or other way. It can be imputed to the state. So that is the second condition. And the third condition, such alleged act or omission should amount to violation of state's international obligation. Violation of state's international obligation. Now, whenever there is an act or omission, thereby it causes an injury to a state, definitely the state will be liable. But as I said earlier, whether that act or omission should violate international law or the consequence of an act or omission causing injury to another, which is required or both is required, that issue is there. And if you see the literature regarding this particular topic, in both the situation, that is, whenever there is a harm caused by state because of act or omission, and if that act or omission is a violation of international law, then also state responsibility arises. Likewise, even if there is no violation of international law, but because of the conduct of a state, if another state suffers an injury, then also the state is responsible under international. So these are the three constituent elements or ingredients necessary for imposing state responsibility under international law. In this context, there were two principles which are very important, that is also considered as the basis of state responsibility, or that is also being increasingly used along with constituent elements of state responsibility. That is the no harm principle. Then the principle of erga omnes, the no harm principle and the principle of erga omnes. No harm principle is very simple. Every country having a responsibility to do actions without harming others. So when I am doing something, or being a state, when I am doing something, I have a responsibility to ensure that my conduct is no way going to harm others. In case my actions will harm others, then I will be responsible under international. Likewise, principle of erga omnes. Erga omnes means towards all, that is towards everyone. So every country, every state having an obligation towards everyone not to cause harm. So when somebody causes harm to others through their act, that will give rise to state responsibility. So as I said, when it comes to state responsibility, it is not necessary there should be always a violation of state's international obligation. Even without violation of state's international obligation, if there is a violation of no harm principle or principle of erga omnes, a state will be held responsible under international law. Now, we can see what are the consequences. Customarily, there are three important consequences for state responsibility. One is restitution. Restitution means replacement. Like if somebody, or what we can say, somebody destroyed the boundary and trespassed the other country's boundary, then the best remedy in such situation is withdraw their force and withdraw their things from that particular place and restore the boundary. That is the best remedy in that situation. That is what restitution. Now, restitution may not be possible in each and every circumstance. Then compensation will be the best remedy. Even where restitution is possible, compensation can be asked together with. Then the final remedy is satisfaction. Satisfaction can be anything which will satisfy the injured party. Like if there is a violation of international law done by one state and the other injured state is saying, you do this particular act. If the other state is ready to do that, then there is satisfaction. So these are the three consequences, or we can say in simple, remedies available when there is responsibility of a state arise. Now, like our municipal law of tort, whenever there is a question of responsibility, along with that responsibility, there arise the idea of defenses. That is, even under international law also, if a state is alleged to have committed a violation, or state is when we are going to impose responsibility to a state, the state can very well escape, or state can very well seek exemption from liability or punishment by pointing out certain defenses. The defenses are like consent, voluntary non-fit injuria, which we used to say in our municipal level. Same way, consent will be applicable as a defense. Second major defense is self-defense. So to protect ourselves, we have taken this measure. Then countermeasure, they have done something, so we have taken a countermeasure to avoid their threat. Then distress and necessity, because of necessity, we have done certain things. Then force majeure. Force majeure means act of God or vis major. So these are all defenses which you already know in your municipal law, in law of tort and other legal framework. So same way, these defenses will be applicable in case of state responsibility also. And you can find relevant articles in this draft articles of state responsibility in this regard. Now, coming to our area, that is state responsibility for contagious diseases. Now, interestingly, if you ask me, as some of the countries alleging a particular country is liable for spreading this coronavirus or COVID-19 or creating COVID-19 pandemic, if you ask me, by applying the basic principles of state responsibility, what are all the circumstances or what are the ways in which a country can be held liable for contagious diseases? I would say there are several ways. And you can see in my screen, there are like 7 different methods, or there are 7 different ways in which a state is responsible for spreading contagious diseases. Like I said, no harm principle. That is, you have to use your land without causing injury to another. Then secondly, violation of erga omnes. You have a duty towards all and you have violated it. Then we have a set of rules and regulations under the title International Health Regulations, IHR. So this contagious diseases or spreading of diseases may violate that international health regulations. Then it will go against Article 12 of International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, so that it will amount to violation of human rights. Then sometimes it may amount to crimes against humanity. Then it will constitute violation of Geneva Conventions. Geneva Conventions in the sense, the 4 Geneva Conventions which constitute international humanitarian law. Then it may sometimes violate certain specific conventions. So these are the various ways in which one state can be responsible under the principles of or under international law for spreading diseases. And I will tell you one by one in detail. Now, before that, we have to see the COVID-19 pandemic. It's not necessary to explain what is this and how hard it attacked the life of individuals across the globe. So I'm not going to tell you the details of that. You know very well. But based on this COVID-19 pandemic, the first petition was filed before Texas District Court in US. It was a class action. It's a special type of action available in US, wherein the plaintiffs claimed $20 trillion US dollars as the compensation against China. Then there were other actions like 3 reports were filed before International Criminal Court. Two was against China and one was against Brazilian president, alleging that the first two were against China because they have created and they were the reason for spreading coronavirus. And the Brazilian president, the allegation was he has not taken sufficient measures to prevent the spread. And because of that, three reports were filed before International Criminal Court stating that they have committed crimes against humanity as per international criminal law. Then another complaint is also filed by International Council of Jurists and Indian Bar Association in front of United Nations Human Rights Council, UNHRC. So these are the petitions filed before the national and international forums against COVID-19, and thereby the parties were attempting to apply the principles relating to state responsibility for this COVID-19. Now, as I said, when we are applying or when we are talking about state responsibility for contagious diseases, I said there are 7 different ways. Now, we can apply those 7 different ways into our COVID-19 scenario. When we are applying this COVID-19 scenario, you can find 3 different circumstances. And for the sake of convenience of discussing, I have made it as 3 different scenarios. And I will tell one by one, then it will be clear for you. First of all, I will take scenario 1. The scenario 1 is the origin of this virus is unknown. Nobody knows from where this virus originated. But everyone knows from which territory it originated. That's it. But how this virus originated, that is unknown. If the origin of this virus is unknown, now how the principles relating to international state responsibility will apply? That we can see. If the origin is unknown, then China can take the defense of act of, because it is act of God. They haven't done anything. Everything happened with unknown reasons. Now, if at all you want to make a country liable for that in a situation where the origin of virus is unknown, then you can think about applying negligence. For what? For taking sufficient measures to allow or to prevent its spreading. Now, if you can successfully establish there is a negligence on the part of the country, the alleged country, that they haven't taken sufficient measures, as a result, this virus escaped and thereby it reached another country's territory. If that be the case, the state will be responsible. But you have to establish there is a negligence on the part of such alleged state. Now, if you can successfully establish the negligence, then you can apply the well-known principle, that is, sic utero to et alienum non ledas. That says, use your own property in such a manner as not to injure that of another. It's a basic fundamental principle under international. You can see the trials melter arbitration case, etc. in this regard. Herein, by applying this particular principle, we can say if there is a negligence in preventing the spread of this virus, the state is responsible under international. But as I said, there should be sufficient evidence, then only it is possible. So that is the scenario 1, if the origin of virus is unknown. Now take the second scenario. As per certain allegations, this virus is escaped from a lab of a particular country. This virus is escaped accidentally from a lab. Now, if that be the case, if the lab is maintained by government agency, or if it is a government lab or a defense lab, we can say there is direct state responsibility. Direct state responsibility. Now, there can be a situation this virus might have escaped from a private lab or a lab which is no way connected with government. If that be the case, then also state is responsible. That responsibility we can place under indirect state responsibility. So if it is escaped from a lab, whether it is government or it is private, in both the situation, state will be responsible. One will be under direct state responsibility, another will be under indirect state responsibility. So it depends upon the circumstance, which type of liability will apply. But in both the case, state is responsible under international. Now, why state is responsible when there is accidental escape from a lab? That is by applying no harm principle. As I said, a state is having liability. A state is liable if it causes injury or harm to another state. So by applying no harm principle, in case of an escape from a lab, a state will be liable. So same way, erga omnes principle, violation of erga omnes. By applying these two, we can say in cases where there is an accidental escape, a state is responsible under international law. Now coming to the third scenario, that is the third possible scenario. As a part of biowarfare, the state was trying to create a bioweapon. And when they were trying to create a bioweapon, accidentally or otherwise, this virus escaped from the lab. So these are the three possible scenarios possible in our context. Now, if that be the case, suppose we are assuming that, just for the sake, we are assuming that this virus was created in a lab as a part of biowarfare, then what would be the consequence under international? We have a specific convention in 1972, that is Convention on the Prohibition of the Development, Production, Stockpiling of Bacteriological and Toxin Weapons and on their destruction. So if anybody does this type of activities in the lab, it will be a direct violation of the provisions of 1972 Convention. So there is specific violation. So if there is specific violation of a treaty provision, that will give rise to international state responsibility, that is direct state responsibility. Then secondly, we have another convention or another international treaty, Protocol for the Prohibition of the Use in War of Obfuscating Poisonous or Other Gases and Bacteriological Methods of Warfare, 1925. And if you go through the provisions of these treaties, then also a state will be responsible under international law for this type of activities. So these two specific treaties provides provisions which will make or which will give rise to liability for dealing with this type of virus as a part of their biowarfare mechanism. Then, other than these two, we have international humanitarian law based on 4 Geneva Conventions adopted in 1949. So these Geneva Conventions specifically provides that prohibition of certain weapons of mass destruction. Now this particular virus, if it has developed as a part of biowarfare, it will definitely go against the provisions of international humanitarian laws, that is the provisions of Geneva Conventions. So in that level, state responsibility will arise. Then the ICC statute International Criminal Court's statute, Article 7 specifically defines the crimes against humanity. So, if it can be successfully established that this virus has been created as a part of biowarfare, then it will come under the definition of crimes against humanity. If that be the case, the state will be responsible under International Criminal Court and it can be prosecuted by International Criminal Court. Then breach of ICESCR, that is human rights violation. Article 12 specifically talks about right to health. Now, if it is established that this virus is a part of biowarfare, it will go against the obligations of a state under Article 12, that is right to health. So it will amount to violation of human rights also. So, but only thing is, we have to establish this virus has been created as a part of biowarfare. So, as I said, when there is an infectious disease or contagious disease originates from one country and travel across the globe, there can be only three scenarios is possible. One is the origin is unknown. Second is it accidentally escapes from a lab. Thirdly, as a part of biowarfare, somebody uses it. Maybe the country from where it started or some other country might have used it. In all these three scenarios, the liability of states under international law will vary. And it depends upon how far the state will be liable under this type of circumstance is always depends upon the facts and circumstance and how effectively we can establish based on the circumstance under which scenario this particular aspect will or this particular infections or disease will come. Then based on that, the state responsibility will be determined. Now, how you are going to enforce state responsibility? That is another major issue under international. So the issue of enforcement of state responsibility is very important. We have different forums which talks about or which is empowered to deal with state responsibility. Primarily International Court of Justice. But the problem with International Court of Justice is, as you all know, it is having jurisdiction only if both the parties together approaches with an agreement. So that means whenever an issue of state responsibility arises, both the parties, both the injured party and the respondent party, they have to, with a consensus, they have to approach ICJ. But generally, reaching that consensus is very difficult. So in the absence of that consensus, the country which is alleging there is state responsibility is prevented from approaching before ICJ. Now take the case of our COVID-19. Even in our COVID-19, though it is alleged that it is a creation of one particular state, it is very difficult. And I would say it is not possible at all to raise this issue before International Court of Justice. Because unless and until the respondent state, the alleged violator, agrees to the same, ICJ cannot exercise jurisdiction. But still, there are large number of cases wherein the issue of state responsibility has been discussed. But in all those cases, both the parties together invited the jurisdiction of ICJ. That is why it was happened. So ICJ is there as a primary body, but it has its own limitation. Then the next one is International Criminal Court. Now, International Criminal Court, based on their statute, if any act or omission which causes or which constitute an offense which is mentioned under the statute of International Criminal Court, then International Criminal Court can initiate proceedings. But in the context of a disease, contagious disease, how far it can be brought under the category of offense? Though there are some statements or there are some articles which says under the definition of crimes against humanity, the spreading of diseases can be put under. But still, there is no clarity in that regard, or certain confusion still exists. Maybe in future, through ICC or International Criminal Court itself, will clarify that what extent spreading of diseases can be treated as an act of crime against humanity, or whether it will come under any of the offense mentioned in ICC statute. So till we get such a clarification, it is very difficult to agitate the matter before ICC. Now, even if the matter is agitated before ICC, the procedure involved in dealing with a report is very tedious and it's very difficult. Practically, it is very difficult to identify or to establish before ICC there is violation of ICC statute or to imposing criminal liability. It's very difficult in the context of contagious diseases. So that is also having its own limitation. Then the most successful one from the experience of international practice, we can say the most successful forum for settling international state responsibility, that is arbitral tribunals. You can see number of cases. In fact, in this topic, there were a large number of cases, but I haven't referred any cases. I just want to give some idea about this topic so you can read relevant materials so that you will get good number of cases which is decided by arbitral tribunals. And in most of the situation, these arbitral tribunals decisions are considered as the final settlement, and based on that arbitral tribunals decisions, international law or the principles relating to state responsibility has originated or developed. So arbitral tribunals are the best forum for the enforcement of state responsibility. Now, in my previous time, I said about certain treaties which talks about state responsibility. So in such a situation, whenever a question of state responsibility arises, that treaty itself may provide a settlement mechanism, like space object liability. With respect to that, there is a body, there is a procedure mentioned in the treaty itself for enforcement of responsibility based on such treaty provisions. So whenever there is a treaty which provides a specific provision for dealing with state responsibility, then that treaty itself may contain a treaty body. So that treaty body can adjudicate any matter relating to state responsibility. Now apply these forums or applying this to our COVID-19 pandemic. Suppose somebody want to enforce state responsibility against a particular country, alleging that this COVID-19 pandemic is a result of their act. Which forum is the appropriate forum? Can any of this forum be considered as an appropriate forum? I would say these forums cannot adjudicate at all effectively. But depends upon the scenario. As I explained earlier, there can be three scenarios. The origin is unknown. Second scenario is it is accidentally escaped from the laboratory. And third is it is created as a part of biowarfare. So based on these three scenario, in which scenario our allegation comes or the party can establish, based on that forum can be identified. But even in such a situation also, identifying ICJ or ICJ cannot exercise jurisdiction without consent of the other country. Then ICC, as I said, if you can successfully establish this spread of disease is something which comes under crimes against humanity, then ICC may have jurisdiction. ICC can be a forum for enforcement of state responsibility. Now, suppose there are some valid evidences, there are some valid reasons for attributing this COVID-19 to a particular country, then if international community is interfering and there is an international pressure, then arbitral tribunals can be created. That can be a best solution. Arbitral tribunals can be created. Now, through that arbitral tribunal, they can make the terms of reference of the issue. Accordingly, they can settle the matter. So, arbitral tribunal will be one of the best solutions. Then, treaty bodies. If the third scenario, that is, it is created as a part of biowarfare, then it will violate specific provisions of the treaty. Like I said, international humanitarian law, it will amount to Geneva Conventions violation. And whenever there is Geneva Conventions violations, that can be taken into account. Then Biological Weapons Convention, they are also a treaty provision. Then we have international humanitarian, international health regulations. Now, when we are talking about international health regulations, it is something which is not binding as such, and there is no consequences as such mentioned for its violation. Though you can find certain obligations like reporting to WHO without any delay and everything is casted. What will happen in case of a violation? That part is missing in our international health regulations. Then, if there is violation of our Article 12, that is right to health, if you can successfully establish this violation, this spread of disease amounts to violation of Article 12, then the body, the treaty body provided in International Covenant on Social, Economic and Cultural Rights can deal with the issue of state responsibility. Now, this is the problem with the forum, the appropriate forum. Now, the major problem comes. Once this matter is agitated before a court, unlike other areas of state responsibility, in the context of a contagious disease, specifically in the context of COVID-19 pandemic, what would be the appropriate remedy? This is a very difficult task to answer. What can be an appropriate remedy? If at all we could successfully establish a state responsibility towards a particular country for this COVID-19 pandemic, what can be the appropriate remedy in this context? It's very difficult to answer. Some of the people will say compensation. Now, if it is compensation, to whom this compensation can be given? Whether this compensation can be given to all the countries who has affected with this pandemic. Accordingly, the countries will share the compensation amount to the injured parties. Now, another problem will come. When we are going to distribute compensation, who all are the injured party? I think everyone in the world is one way or other way has suffered the hardships created by COVID-19 pandemic. So the identifying injured party is a very, very tedious process. You may say death or the persons who have died. Now, those who are died due to this virus, they are definitely injured party, but there are people, even if they haven't died or they haven't lost their life, they have also suffered. Like people, those who have suffered their business, those who have suffered large scale economic loss. So all these persons will be considered as injured party. So identifying the proper remedy and identifying the injured party will be a very tedious process. Now, when it comes to other aspects of state responsibility, like violating an international treaty, thereby causing damage to a state, it is very easy to identify a remedy. You can either pay the compensation, or you can have restitution, or you can have satisfaction. But when it comes to a contagious diseases in the nature of COVID-19 or a pandemic, what can be an appropriate remedy and to whom this remedy will be given? It is a very, very difficult task. So in this aspect, state responsibility, whatever principles we have saying, whatever laws we were discussed, all will fail. So international community has to think about developing some mechanism to go away with this problem. Now, having said all the aspects of state responsibility and how the basic principles of state responsibility is applicable to COVID-19 pandemic, I would like to conclude by saying very few remarks. Like, there's a famous saying, there is something good in everything bad. That means whatever bad experiences we were undergoing, there is something good in that also. And I would say, in the context of state responsibility, COVID-19 pandemic has something good. Now, you may have conflict with me, you may argue with me why I am saying it is good. The reason is very simple. This COVID-19 pandemic has exposed our weakness. Exposed our weakness. Weakness in the sense, weakness or gaps existing in the international law framework. And if you see in the national level also COVID-19 has provided something good. That is, the countries have realized, or it has exposed the weaknesses existing in the healthcare system of countries. So both at national level and at international level, this COVID-19 has given something good. That good thing is it has revealed or identified the gap existing in the international law framework as well as international health law. So with this understanding, if the international community can create a proper law dealing with state responsibility, specifically in the context of contagious diseases, that will be good for the future generation. So that is why I said there is something good in bad. Because like in national level, since almost all the countries have identified the strength and weakness of their healthcare facilities existing. Now, by taking or learning from their experience, they have to strengthen. So COVID-19 has provided this idea, how to strengthen and what are the weaknesses where they are lacking. So by taking this experience or learning from this experience, if the countries can strengthen their healthcare system, definitely it will provide best, or it will provide more good to future generation. So this COVID-19 has provided some good to future generation. When it comes to international law, it has also opened up our eyes, and it has identified the gaps existing in the international law framework dealing with state responsibility for contagious diseases. So with this understanding, with this experience, international community has to develop a law relating to state responsibility, specifically focusing on health care as well as contagious diseases. And if international community can do that, definitely that will provide some benefit to the future generation. We have suffered, but we can save our future generations, at least against some of the adverse effects of this type of pandemics in future. So with this, I conclude. I want to say nothing lasts forever. Get well soon. Thank you. Thank you very much. In case if you have any conflict with my arguments, and if you want any clarification or further details regarding any of the points which I raised, you can contact me. You can either write through email or you can connect me through WhatsApp. My details are provided here. I will be very happy to answer your all queries. Thank you so much for listening to me. And once again, I would like to thank Professor Dr. Joshi sir for giving me this wonderful opportunity. And I also would like to thank the entire team behind UGC HRDC of Gujarat University. Thank you. Thank you very much. Have a good day.